Thomas here, and welcome to another episode of BRStv Reacts, where I get to check out your awesome reef aquariums at home or wherever you keep them. It's a lot of fun. I'm gonna give you my general thoughts, maybe some praise, maybe even some constructive criticism if you could use a hand. That's what I'm here for. I'm gonna try and help. Today is going to be an Instagram edition where we're checking out the tanks you submitted via Instagram by hashtagging them BRStv Reacts. So let's get started. First up, we've got Charlie the Tuna. Let's see how the tuna reefs. Starting off strong with a really nice 400-gallon. Charlie the Tuna says 400-gallon acrylic, 8 Radion XR15 Pros, 6 80-watt T5s, 4 PM60s, cal reactor, sulfur denitrator, Eva salt, and just an absolute brilliant tank. Tons of color, beautiful fish, some really nice Antheus in there, some nice angels, some wrasses, bunch of tangs, just a gorgeous group of fish. And when you got 400 gallons to work with, like loading it up with fish just always adds just a ton of character and color and movement to the tank. Black Scopus tank, very nice. Super cool. I absolutely love how large and mature these coral colonies are. They look absolutely fantastic. Beautiful red flower pot, it looks like, down in the corner. Bunch of chalices. Elephant ear, is that elephant ear coral? Or elephant skin? You don't see that often. Beautiful, and it's green, which is really nice. I'm used to seeing brown ones. Man, tongue coral, just humongous. Copper band butterfly I saw back there. Hippo tank looks like it might have some lateral line or something going on. Mind you, I will say they're super, in my experience anyways, super prone to it. I've seen a lot of them, you know, get returned to stores and stuff that have lateral lines. So I'm not sure if this happened to you while it was in your tank. Based on how the rest of your fish look, I almost think maybe you gave it a rescue situation where you found it and it wasn't in the greatest condition and gave it a home. I don't want to make any assumptions, but it is unfortunately super common with hippo tanks, at least as far as I've seen. So it's really nice to see those large acro colonies way up top there. I mentioned in the past, mixed reefs are sometimes the hardest because you're trying to accommodate light levels for both very high light corals and then lower light corals. And you've got a mix in here for sure of, you know, SPS and LPS, and having those SPS right up near the top is definitely the easiest way to make sure they're getting enough light while also providing some shadowing and stuff lower down for the other corals. I love that you've basically got corals floor to ceiling in this tank, all the way from the substrate to the top. The rockwork does come up probably higher than I would have done, but for LPS, it's not that big of a deal. Like, you can see that gigantic torch. Even though it's grown very large, it doesn't grow very tall, whereas like the staghorn acros and stuff are already starting to touch the surface of the water. But yeah, that's pretty typical. So I maybe would have kept the rockwork a little bit lower, but the tank's been established obviously for a very long time, and there's absolutely no reason really to go in and start messing with the rockwork in such a already beautiful and well-grown-in tank. I think it would just cause more harm than good, unless you were trying to do a complete restart. I mean, you've even got a sub, you've even got a leather in there, like a finger leather coral or something in the corner there. So you've got a huge array from softy all the way up to SPS, and everything's looking really happy from what I can see. And the substrate's like bone white, which either you put a lot of effort into making sure it stays vacuumed all the time, even though you got a super tall tank, or you've got a really good cleanup crew that's doing a pretty good job of turning it over all the time so it doesn't get a bunch of algae and stuff. Absolutely gorgeous tank. I'm gonna be honest. I kind of wish you showed me a little bit of what was going on behind the scenes in terms of filtration. I know you mentioned you've got the sulfur denitrator, which is pretty cool because not a lot of people run sulfur denitrators or sulfur reactors, sometimes they're called. But yeah, just really gorgeous. Beautiful wrasses. Really nice collection of fish. Really nice collection of fish. Really cool, eclectic collection of coral. Just all kinds of stuff in there. Man, that is like a bustling reef. Like, if I was gonna go out and, you know, do a little bit of snorkeling on a like really bustling coral reef, this is kind of what I imagine it would look like. Man, I've done it a few times. I'll be honest, there's probably more fish in this tank than I've seen when I was snorkeling. But Charlie the Tuna, awesome tank, and thanks for proving that the world's favorite food fish can reef. I tried. Next up, we've got Eric N8521N. Let's see what you got cooking in the world of reefing. Awesome. Blues turned way up, but that's no big deal. I know you're trying to show off them fire corals of yours. They look really, really nice. Beautiful bubble tip. The carpet is gorgeous. I can't tell how large this tank is. Oh, you say it right there. It's an IM Nouveau 40. Using a Kessel, real nice. I see you got a hang-on skimmer there too, or an internal skimmer that's just in the back chamber, but looking good. Beautiful carpet that will eventually just take up that entire tank, basically. That thing is gonna get massive. And they're honestly not even the easiest anemones to keep. Of all the different types of clownfish safe anemones, they're one of the hardest in my experience. Magnifica probably being another really hard one. But it's looking really nice. The red ones are one of my favorites. I'm also really partial to the blues. The blues are pretty cool. They don't fluoresce as nice as the reds or the greens, but they look really cool. So I dig it. But yeah, that thing is probably gonna take up the entire bottom of the tank. I can see that you've already given it like a pretty solid buffer, so you've got a pretty decent idea that these things can put out one heck of a sting, whether it's with corals or other fish. So you've got like a nice thick band of white substrate where there are no other corals. Like everywhere else, coral, some rockwork and stuff, and there's just thick white band where there's nothing else allowed to go, so that carpet can't get to it. That band is just gonna keep growing and growing as that carpet gets bigger and bigger. But I'm sure you probably did your research and already know all that. And even if at some point you're like, I can't get a bigger tank, I'm just gonna leave this thing in here. If you remove all of the rest of the corals and rockwork and stuff to their own separate aquarium and just let that carpet take up that whole tank, it'll just be a giant, beautiful, wispy carpet with a couple of clowns. That's like a really cool, almost biotope or species only type tank, which I've thought a lot about. I've thought a lot about having just a massive carpet and then clowns and that's it. And I'm on a super long tangent. What I'm trying to say is I like your carpet. It's gonna get massive and take over, but I'm sure you're prepped for that. And if you're not, now you know. Oh, getting into the stand. Got an ADJ power center, some Vibrant I see in there. I really like the stand, by the way. It looks like it might be homemade, or perhaps you had it commissioned or something. I don't think that's a stand that people typically purchase. So just kudos on the stand. It looks really cool. Love the collection of super bright softies, bounce mushrooms with the giant vesicles on them. Rock flowers are looking smashing too. Really nice. Maxi carpets in there. I'm a big fan of the maxi carpets. This tank has a lot of anemones, and it's a really great kind of showcase for how much color and vibrance you get out of anemones. Like it's pretty insane. Just saying, one of my favorite anemones that you see very rarely is a tube anemone, and they have some really cool screaming colors, a little more on the pastel side because they're like partially translucent. But man, anemones, I think a lot of time get a little bit underappreciated as residents in the tank, specifically for adding just crazy color. It's starting to come up a lot more with rock flowers and with obviously bubble tips have been around for a very long time with their very bright colors. But yeah, this is a really cool tank that kind of showcases anemones in the forefront and then spackles some other things in there like the zoas and whatnot, just to add some different texture and dimension. But very cool. I'm a big fan. Very clean looking tank too. Substrate looks dope. Everything's looking real nice. Shroom box up at the top too. I don't know if you're planning to sell those off, if they're frags you made, or if they're new acquisitions that just haven't really stuck to anything yet, so you're giving them a chance to do that without getting blown all over. But yeah, those shroom boxes are pretty cool. Eric, awesome tank. Up next, we've got farmed frags. Can't wait to see what you got going on. I'm assuming you've got some frags you're farming. Wow. You have a ton of coral in here. Some pretty big mature SPS colonies, which is really nice. Lots of frag racks too. I guess that's where the farmed frags comes from. Tons and tons of that zoanthid you got in there, just everywhere. I can see you got some really nice pieces on your frag rack too. It looks like maybe some mummy-eyed chalice. There's a few different watermelon chalice, maybe a few different really nice chalices. Got a whack load of polyps in this tank. Looks like you have a nice fungia plate too. Some really nice bubble tips kind of hiding there in the back for your clowns. Really, really nice clowns. I wish the tank was just a little less blue. I know it really shows off the fluorescence in the corals, but it's really hard to appreciate like the fish and the colors of the fish. And you know, some of the other corals in the tank that don't fluoresce as much, like the giant stag, that's probably like a dark purple or blue color. That's just not fluorescing as much with the blues on. I would love to see a bit more of that. I mean, that green Sinularia is insane. That thing is just bright for days. Those are like, bar none, one of the greenest corals I've come across in the hobby, and I absolutely love seeing them because they are just radioactive. Lots of flow. I can see a bunch of flow pumps in there. Truthfully, my only kind of pet peeve is that you got a lot of frag racks in here, and it kind of, it's necessary when you got a ton of frags. Don't get me wrong. I can appreciate the struggle, especially if you don't have room for another tank, or if you just don't even want to take care of a second tank. Taking care of one reef can be tough enough. Adding a second one is just adding, you know, more complexity to your life that you might not want. So I totally get it, but it's one of those things that, for me, it always just kind of detracts a little bit from the display. Like I'm trying to love this beautiful natural reef, and then there's just this perfectly square rack full of coral frags. At the same time, it's kind of a nice way to keep everything in order. Because the last thing you want is your frags blowing all over the place, or you try to stick them in the stand and then they just fall over. That's no good either. So I totally get it. Really nice clowns. Like honestly, really, really cool looking clowns. Lots and lots of coral. I love your plating corals at the back. I'm guessing they're probably Monties of some kind. I can't tell for sure. Unfortunately, I always watch this in slightly lower res, just based on my wonderful rural internet. But I love that they're packed up against the back of the tank where they've got all this space to kind of whir and do their crazy things without shading everything else in the tank, which they will always eventually do. So really smart move on that one, and a great way to add like a lot of fun and depth and dimension to the back of the tank. One of the things I love about putting those types of corals back there is that as they played out and were out, it kind of makes the back of the tank less obvious. And what I mean by that is if you have just like a flat black background or like overflow panels and stuff that are very noticeable, you see your reef and then you know it ends. It's like, you're like, okay, that's the end of the reef. Like right behind the rock work, there's nothing. And I know that. But when you add something in the back wall like that, that's gonna plate out and kind of, it masks the fact that the back of the tank is right there. Because all those plates make it look like it could go on in between them forever. And it's just a really cool look, and I've always dug it. So really good work there. I hope you share all those frags, by the way, with your friends, your reefing buddies. Or are you just farming them for like, for hoarding purposes, which I've been known to do. Look at the surface of the water just. Also got some either random flow generators or penductors on your output, which is really, really nice. Great way to make better use of your output nozzles. Man, I honestly, I really wish I could get a better look. Post a picture. Do me a favor, post a picture and tag me in it. I would love to see that big staghorn type acro you've got in the middle a little bit clearer with like your daylights and stuff on. Because that thing must be so nice. It's shaped so nicely. Man, so cool. Farm frags, thanks for the eye candy. Lots of fun, really cool. Keep on farming those frags. Next up, we've got Josh Drifter, or Josh Dr. Footer, without the vowels. I can only guess. All right, Josh, let's see what you got going on. You got a little write-up here, so I'm gonna read it out. 75-gallon drilled DIY LED lights, very cool. eShop's Advanced 200 Sup, Ice Cap 1K Gyre, Reef Octopus 1500 Skimmer, a Vast Skim Locker, Mag 18 Return Pump, keeping it simple, and DIY LED Refugium Light. Very cool that you're doing the DIY route. Let's see how everything's working out for you. Cool. So based on what I'm seeing, it looks like it's a newer tank. Definitely have some decent sized colonies in there already, but definitely room for coralline growth and a lot of smaller pieces. So I'm assuming this tank's been around for a bit, but it's not as grown out or as mature as some of the other tanks we saw. It's a very exciting part of the reefing hobby because you get to watch everything kind of take shape and do its thing. Got some Zoas on the frag rack starting your collection. Awesome. I love that big branching Euphyllia you've got there is really, really pretty. I also am a big fan of the cabbage coral you've got. One of my favorite softies. I think a little underappreciated, especially that neon green one. Adds a really cool shape to the tank, especially considering it's a softie. Not a lot of softies have that kind of shape. Beautiful. I don't know what kind of brain that is there on the substrate with that like candy cane kind of striping, but that thing is gorgeous. I love that your torch is just like flowing in the wind. Beautiful Duncan. All the corals look like they're enjoying it. The Tyree type neon green leather is gorgeous. Clowns are nice and personable. Two different types of clowns in the same tank, not beating the snot out of each other. That's a rarity. But I'm glad it's working out. Some nice button polyps, candy canes, a few different types of candy canes. Oh, you've even got the like reddish brown with the green mouth, which is really, really cool. Got some red cap in there, already taken off like wildfire like it always does. Maybe even some green cap, maybe purple. Duncan's looking happy. Oh, I see a skull. I see a skull. Nice. Hey, don't ever let anybody tell you you can't put a skull in your tank. I think there's a cool way to do everything, and when that thing's covered in coral, that's going to be pretty awesome. Subsystem looks nice and clean. You know, for a DIY light, you definitely have a refugium light that looks like it's, you know, pretty well put together. I don't know if you got a kit or something, but it's got like the black box design, which is a very, very, you know, common format. So getting parts for that's going to be really easy too if anything ever goes wrong with it. And, you know, taking the road less traveled and going DIY can be sometimes one of the most rewarding ways to go. Not because it's necessarily going to work so much better than anything else, because let's face it, reef lighting right now, we've got so many options that work incredibly well at growing coral. It's been proven by, you know, various reefers that have smashing tanks, and they all have different kinds of lights. But the thing that's so rewarding about it is that when you get it right and your tank, you know, really performs well under it and your corals are growing and they're happy, you've got that pride of knowing you built that light yourself. And, you know, the fruits of your labor are this gorgeous aquarium, and it just ties you to your tank a little bit more. And it's a lot of fun to do it that way sometimes. So I really, really get it. Very, very cool. This tank, I think this is going to be one of those tanks where in like, I don't know, 8 months, 12 months, maybe, yeah, somewhere close to approaching a year, it's going to be pretty packed with coral. You've already got a ton of coral in there. It just needs some time to grow, get established, and just start taking off. In 2 years, this tank's going to be so full. So full, you're not even gonna know what to do with it. Really, really awesome. I love your collection of Discosoma in the corner there too. Those red and like orange and then purple mushrooms. Those are classics that I remember from back in the day. Like we're talking, I don't know, 2006, 2007. Like they were everywhere. Everybody had tons of them, and they kind of went away for a while. People didn't gravitate towards them as much. You know, people were really focused on, at the time, like Acanthastria and Aussie corals were becoming really, really popular as they became, you know, more prevalent in the hobby in North America. And then they kind of just disappeared, and you couldn't find them for a while. And then all of a sudden people were like, oh, mushrooms are amazing. Bounce mushrooms, I think, really started this, and Rhodactis and stuff. But yeah, jawbreakers. Now everybody's like, every mushroom, all the mushrooms, I must have. So it's nice to see some of the classics because I just don't get to see them that often. Very, very cool. And let's face it, they're beautiful. I also really like the, it's like a maze brain you have in the back right-hand side of the tank. That's a really, really nice piece. I can also sincerely appreciate that you had the whites turned on so that I could get a really good look at everything, like the true colors and stuff. I personally would normally have a slightly bluer tank than this, so I don't know if you set it up this way specifically so that the camera would pick it up as best as possible, or if you actually keep the whites that high, but I will probably just turn the whites down just a touch, just to try to get a little bit more of that color pop. I find especially with like purple Monty and stuff like that, having the whites on a bit higher is nice because those purples and stuff just don't show up very well under actinic only or just like really, really heavy blues. But yeah, some of those other corals I'm sure look just ridiculous under basically all actinics. Like that brain, you've got like a rainbow brain in there too. That thing must just be insane. When this tank is covered in coralline and corals, like I said, 6, 8 months maybe, send it in again. I want to see this thing again. I know that this tank has so much potential to just look absolutely nuts, and I'm looking forward to it. Keep up the good work. Enjoy your reef hobby. Josh, Drifter or Dr. Footer? It's probably Drifter, and I'm just being silly about it. But I don't want to assume either. Next up, we've got Tamra LPD. This is obviously a very small tank. It looks like we've got like a Corallia Nano or something akin to that up in the corner there. Clownfish, I see maybe a cleaner shrimp up in the corner. Nice use of a square tank is having that rockwork kind of build up in the center. Really nice, creates that kind of mountainous peak. The little volcano in the tank. Lots and lots of beautiful, easy corals. Looks like a cristata, I think they're called, which is a type of Euphyllia. Lots of zoanthids, palithoa type polyps, maybe even a protopally of some kind. A nice small piece of that green Palaonepthia, which is one of my favorites. Got some neon green star polyps on the back. Colt coral, maybe even a, maybe that's a hammer? A little branching hammer up at the top there. Some yellow sand polyps, which are really, really cool too. Don't see those as often. They go one of two ways. Either they don't do very well because the tank doesn't have enough like debris and nutrient. I find that they do really well in tanks that have like dirtier water and they just kind of disappear if the tank water isn't dirty. But if the water does have enough substance in it, they can take over. Like they will grow on everything. But they're looking really, really happy and super bushy, so that's awesome. This is a really nice softy tank. I do see what looks like a little bit of possibly Bryopsis or hair algae that you've got in there. In a softy tank like this, and especially in a nano, it's going to be a little more challenging. In a softy tank, you don't want to reduce the nutrients too far because softies really like higher nutrients, and I find that they'll eventually outcompete the algae in most instances. You have a ton of coral in this tank, so there's a pretty good chance that the coral will end up helping to fight that off. If you want to try to do it without adding anything extra to the tank, I highly recommend that every time you do any kind of a water change, and even if you're not going to do a weekly water change, go in and remove as much as you can manually, at least once a week, and that'll help knock that back. If you want to try snails for it, I'm a big fan of Trochus Snails. I find they do a really, really good job generally with algae and with hair algae and stuff as well. So that's probably the direction I'd go. Otherwise, you can try products like Vibrance, which you know, we've shown in Investigate series that Vibrance can work really well if given enough time. It's one of those products where it might say 4 weeks on the bottle, but really we're looking at like 9 weeks. But yeah, that hair algae, it's not taken over yet. You know, it's still there. It's in a few places, but it hasn't taken over yet. Get at it now before it becomes a massive problem. I don't think it will because this is a softy tank and they're going to be sucking up a lot of nutrients, but don't take the risk. Act on it right away. Yeah, if it wasn't for the fact that I picked that out, like, this tank looks pretty immaculate. I mean, just look at your substrate. The substrate looks really, really clean. And I love that blasto. The blasto down on the sand bed is gorgeous. And everything looks so happy. Happy, healthy, puffy polyps. Rock flower down there. Got a Florida Recordia. Got some Rhodactis mushrooms. Got some Xenia in there too. Again, Xenids, they suck up nutrients so fast. When they take off, like hair algae even has a hard time competing with them. But you gotta make sure you're manually removing it if you're not gonna do anything else. Manually remove it for sure. I would add a Trochus Snail or two if you haven't already. But beyond that, it's a really nice tank and you've got a lot of coral in there already. It's already got a lot of nice shape and a lot of movement. So for a softy tank, it's looking really, really nice. And also, nano tanks are not easy. And I've said this when I've seen other nano tanks. This is obviously a pretty small nano tank, probably in the 8 to 10 gallon range. I'm guessing, it might be a bit bigger, but I'm guessing it's around there. It's really tough to keep parameters stable and keep nutrients low in tanks like this because you're dealing with so little water and there's so little dilution that things just build up very, very quickly and things can change very, very quickly. But I think you're doing a phenomenal job. The tank is really, really pleasing to look at. I've actually, this is my, what, 4th or 5th time hitting the play button here and watching it loop around. And I think you have what is probably perfect flow for this tank too. I can see through the rockwork as well, so I know that the flow is going to be moving around the rockwork and through it. It's not just like a big mass of rocks or a big pile of rocks with no way for the water to pass through. But just based on the movement of everything in the tank, everything's got a little bit of a sway to it. Nothing's blown all over the place, but it's got that movement you'd expect. You can see the small particulates in the water flowing about. So yeah, that one small Corallia type pump and your return seems to be doing a really effective job, which is pretty common when you're dealing with a smaller amount of water like this. It's really simple, but really nice and just relaxing to look at. Just Tamara, thank you so much for capping off the end of this episode with such an awesome little tank. That was a lot of fun. I really like seeing what you guys get up to. It's just, puts a smile on my face, gets me all ramped up and amped up to get my own tank going and just, so much fun, guys. If you want to submit your tank so that I can see it here and give you my thoughts and feedback, you can go ahead and do that by uploading to Instagram like these fine folks did and hashtag it BRStv Reacts. And yeah, if you want to check out some of the previous BRStv Reacts that we've done, you can check them out in this playlist right here. Lots of really cool tanks.